Beef tallow has a melting point of 115 degrees Fahrenheit. That is precisely the temperature of human skin under sustained sunlight. The fat does not sit on the surface. It softens, spreads, and absorbs in under 60 seconds. Combined with Beeswax and a small measure of olive oil, this fat becomes the oldest skin cream in continuous human use. It was rendered in colonial kitchens. It was packed into glass jars on Conestoga wagons. It was scooped onto cracked hands in coal mining cabins. It was kept on the vanity of every American woman, rich or poor, from the Revolution to the end of the Second World War. One jar cost about 50 cents to produce. It lasts 6 months. It does not separate. It does not spoil. It contains no water, no synthetic emulsifier, no preservative, no fragrance, no parabens, no fillers, just 3 ingredients, the exact same molecular structure as the lipids in your own skin. Before 1948, this was not alternative skincare. It was not a wellness trend. It was the only skincare. Every household made it. Then a generation of advertising convinced an entire country that the cream their grandmothers had used for 2 centuries was unscientific, unsanitary, and primitive. The recipe did not fail. It was not improved. It was simply replaced by products designed to be repurchased every month forever. The global skincare industry generates $180 billion a year. The American share of that market is roughly $90 billion. L'Oreal alone collects $46 billion annually. Estée Lauder, $15 billion. Procter & Gamble's beauty division, $28 billion. These 4 companies, between them, control over half of every facial cream sold in the United States. The average American woman spends between $300 and $1,200 a year on facial skincare alone. That figure does not include body lotion, hand cream, lip balm, eye cream, or sunscreen. The full skincare bill for the average household runs between $500 and $2,000 annually. A single jar of luxury moisturizer at any department store costs between $60 and $400. The replacement cycle is 6 to 8 weeks. Over a 30-year period, the average woman sends between $15,000 and $40,000 to the skincare industry. $40,000 spent on jars of cream that did not exist before 1948. Open one of those jars. Read the label. The first ingredient is almost always water. The second is usually mineral oil or petroleum, both of which are petroleum byproducts. The third is a synthetic emulsifier, often a polyethylene glycol or a silicone. Then comes a long list of preservatives, fragrances, dyes, and texture agents, 20 to 30 ingredients. To accomplish what tallow, beeswax, and olive oil accomplished by themselves for 200 years. The 50-cent recipe has no packaging budget, no counter at Saks, no magazine spread, no celebrity endorsement. No clinical trial funded by the manufacturer. No anti-aging claim approved by the marketing department. It has tallow. It has beeswax. It has oil. It softens, protects, and heals the skin. It always has. The reason you do not already know this is not because it stopped working. It is because a $180 billion industry cannot exist if you do. Every dollar you spend on a skincare jar is a dollar extracted from a problem your great-grandmother solved for 50 cents in her kitchen in 20 minutes. The entire business model depends on one thing, that you never find out what she knew. In the 1920s, American women who walked into a drugstore would find one cream on the shelf. It was called Pond's Cold Cream. It had been sold since 1907. The formula was a direct copy of the homemade recipe used in every household in the country. Mineral oil had begun replacing tallow as the base, but the structure was the same. Wax, oil, water. A simple emulsion. Most women did not buy it. They made their own. The recipe was printed in every home economics textbook. It was passed in handwritten cards between mothers and daughters. The Department of Agriculture published rendering guides. The secret catalog sold the equipment. There was no industry because there did not need to be one. Then came 1946. The end of wartime rationing released enormous quantities of refined petroleum byproducts onto the consumer market. Mineral oil, petroleum, and paraffin became cheaper than animal fat for the first time in American history. The cosmetics industry pivoted overnight. Animal fats were reframed as primitive, unsanitary, and rural. Petroleum became modern, scientific, and clean. In 1948, Estée Lauder opened her first counter at Saks Fifth Avenue in New York City. Within 5 years, she had counters in 85 department stores. The model was not new product. The model was new packaging, new pricing, and new perceived prestige. By 1955, the American cosmetics industry was spending over $300 million a year on advertising. Adjusted for inflation, that is nearly $4 billion in today's money. The strategy followed the same playbook every consumer industry used in the post-war decade. Sponsor the magazines a woman reads on her commute. Place the product in every Hollywood film. Pay actresses to credit a brand for their complexion. Frame the homemade alternative as something only poor, rural, or backward women would still use. Do this for 10 years straight in every magazine, on every billboard, on every television set. By 1960, the war was over. A generation of women who had watched their mothers render tallow on the back porch now believe that real skincare came from a counter in Manhattan. The recipe was not outlawed. It was not disproven. It was simply drowned. Under $300 million a year of advertising, there was a better way. When there was only a more expensive way, the Weston A. Price Foundation has spent decades documenting the lipid composition of traditional animal fats and the skin response to them in case studies. The data shows tallow shares roughly the same fatty acid profile as the sebum produced by human skin. The findings have been published. They have been peer-reviewed. They have never been referenced in a single mainstream skincare advertisement, not banned outright. Just never mentioned again in any beauty magazine published after 1958. Never included in any home economics textbook printed after 1965. Never mentioned by any dermatologist trained in a school whose research grants come from the industry that replaced it. The recipe has 3 ingredients and 1 piece of equipment. Every component is available at any grocery store, any farm supply, or online for pennies. The total cost to produce a 6-month supply of skin cream is under $1. Here is exactly what each ingredient does, why it works, and how to assemble it. Component 1. Beef tallow. Tallow is rendered beef fat. It has been the base of every animal fat balm in human history. A pound of grass-fed beef suet, the firm fat surrounding the kidneys, costs between $3 and $5 at any farm direct butcher. 1 pound rendered produces about 10 ounces of pure tallow. That is enough for 10 to 15 jars of cream. The science behind tallow is straightforward. Human skin produces a natural oil called sebum, which is composed primarily of triglycerides, wax esters, and fatty acids. The fatty acid profile of beef tallow is almost identical to the fatty acid profile of human sebum. Roughly 50% saturated fat, 40% monounsaturated, 10% polyunsaturated. When tallow is applied to skin, the skin does not recognize it as a foreign substance. It absorbs it the same way it absorbs its own oil. To render tallow, cut suet into 1-inch cubes. Place in a heavy pot over the lowest heat your stove can hold. Do not add water. Do not add salt. Allow the fat to melt slowly over 2 to 3 hours. Strain the liquid through cheesecloth into a clean glass jar. Discard the solid bits. The strained fat will be clear and pale yellow when warm and pure white when cooled. Stored in a cool, dark cabinet. Rendered tallow keeps for over a year without refrigeration. 1 pound of rendered tallow. About $4, enough base for 10 jars. Component 2. Beeswax. Beeswax is the structural agent. It turns liquid oils into a stable, solid balm. A 1 pound block of pure beeswax costs about $15 at any farm supply or online. 1 pound is enough for 40 to 50 jars of cream. The chemistry is simple. Beeswax is a wax ester with a melting point of 144 degrees Fahrenheit. When melted into oil and then cooled, it forms a soft crystalline lattice that traps the oil in a smooth, scoopable solid. It also has a slight occlusive effect on skin, meaning it forms a thin, breathable film that slows water loss. Commercial moisturizers achieve this effect with synthetic silicones. Beeswax does it naturally. Beeswax also has mild antibacterial properties. Studies from the University of Athens Department of Pharmacy have documented its activity against common skin bacteria, including Staphylococcus aureus. That is why a beeswax balm does not require any added preservative. The beeswax itself is the preservative. For the recipe, you will need approximately 1 tablespoon of beeswax pellets per jar. Component 3. Cold-pressed olive oil. Olive oil is the carrier and softener. It thins the tallow, improves spreadability, and adds vitamin E and squalene, 2 compounds that occur naturally in human skin. A bottle of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil costs between $7 and $12 at any grocery store, and is enough for 30 to 40 jars. The fatty acid profile of olive oil is roughly 75% oleic acid. Oleic acid is one of the same fatty acids dominant in human sebum. When combined with tallow, the resulting cream is structurally and chemically very close to the body's own oil. That is why it does not clog pores when applied properly. It mirrors what the skin already produces. You will need approximately 2 tablespoons of olive oil per jar. The assembly. The system has 3 ingredients. The recipe takes 20 minutes from start to finish. First, set up a double boiler. Place a glass measuring cup or a small heat-safe bowl inside a saucepan filled with 2 inches of simmering water. The indirect heat protects the ingredients from scorching. Second, add 4 tablespoons of rendered tallow, 1 tablespoon of beeswax pellets, and 2 tablespoons of cold-pressed olive oil to the bowl. This is the standard ratio. 4 parts tallow, 1 part beeswax, 2 parts oil. Memorize it. The same ratio scales to any batch size. Third, stir gently as the mixture melts. The beeswax will dissolve last. Once the liquid is fully clear, remove the bowl from the heat. Fourth, pour the warm liquid into a small, clean glass jar with a tight-fitting lid. A 4-ounce mason jar is ideal. Allow the cream to cool at room temperature for about 2 hours. Do not refrigerate. Refrigeration causes the wax to crystallize unevenly and produces a grainy texture. Once cooled, the cream will be soft, smooth, and scoopable. Apply a pea-sized amount to clean skin. Let it absorb for 30 seconds before dressing. 1 jar lasts an average woman 4 to 6 months of daily use. A few practical notes on use. Apply to slightly damp skin for the deepest absorption. The thin layer of moisture on the surface helps the lipids spread evenly without leaving a heavy film. For dry hands, apply at night and wear cotton gloves to bed. The cream will absorb fully by morning, leaving the skin soft and rebuilt. For windburned faces, apply twice daily, morning and night. For cracked heels, apply a thicker layer and cover with socks overnight. 2 simple variations adjust the cream for different skin types. For drier skin, increase the olive oil to 3 tablespoons and reduce the beeswax to a half tablespoon. The cream will be softer and more emollient. For oilier skin, reduce the olive oil to 1 tablespoon and increase the beeswax to 1.5 tablespoons. The cream will be firmer and more occlusive, sitting longer on the surface before absorbing. Distort is straightforward. The cream contains no water, which means it has no environment for bacteria or mold to grow. Stored in a sealed jar at room temperature, it stays fresh for 1 full year. No refrigeration, no preservative, no expiration date stamped on the lid, the total cost. About 50 cents per jar in materials after the initial investment in beeswax, which lasts a year. Remember, a single department store cream costs $60 to $400 and lasts 6 weeks. This costs 50 cents and lasts 6 months. That is a 400 to 1 cost difference for a chemically equivalent product. The chemistry has not changed since your great-grandmother's time. Tallow still matches human sebum. Beeswax still binds and protects. Olive oil still softens and carries. The $220 jar on the counter at Saks does roughly the same thing. With more ingredients, more packaging, more advertising, and 400 times the price. Walk into a tenement apartment in Manhattan in 1932. Walk into a sharecropper's cabin in Mississippi the same year. Walk into a kitchen in Holmes County, Ohio. On the windowsill or the vanity of every one of those homes, you would find the same small glass jar, pale cream inside, a handwritten label or no label at all. This was not regional, it was universal. From the colonial kitchens of 17th century Boston to the wagon trains, heading west to the apartments of immigrant New York, every American woman made some version of this cream. The base ingredient changed with what was available. Beef tallow on cattle ranches, lard on hog farms, lanolin on sheep ranges, but the principle was identical. Render an animal fat, bind it with wax, soften it with oil, apply it daily during the Great Depression. When 40% of American families earned less than $1,000 a year, women's skin was healthy. Hands were soft. Faces were unbroken by the wind. Not because these women had access to advanced cosmetic chemistry. Because they had access to a recipe their grandmothers had perfected over 200 years. The same formula appears across every traditional culture that ever kept livestock. Scandinavian households used reindeer tallow and beeswax through centuries of dark winters. The peoples of the Mongolian steppe rendered yak fat. Greek farmers used lanolin from sheep wool. Egyptian women in the time of the pharaohs blended animal fat with plant oils for the same purpose. It was the most universal beauty formula in human history. And it took less than 15 years of advertising to convince an entire civilization that it was primitive. For 50 cents a jar, using tallow, beeswax, and olive oil, you can replace every facial cream, body lotion, and hand balm in your home. Starting tonight, no transition period, no adjustment. The same formula that protected American women's skin for 2 centuries will work on yours by morning. The complete system, including exact ratios, scaled batch sizes, variations for sensitive and dry skin, and the full Depression-era beauty regimen, is linked in the description below. It covers skin, hair, body, and the full personal care system your great-grandmother kept on a single shelf for under $5 a year. Tomorrow. This channel will show you the exact foods that replaced every vitamin and supplement on the shelf for $0, and why the $50 billion supplement industry will never tell you what your great-grandparents already knew. Every product in your home once had a $0 version. They buried it. Now you know.